Welcome to This Explainer. When we picture nature's fury, we usually think of the loud, explosive stuff, right? Shattering earthquakes, roaring hurricanes, or the catastrophic floods that totally dominate the evening news. But history actually reveals a much quieter and honestly far deadlier threat, one that doesn't announce itself with a siren. Today, we're diving into the silent fire, nature's deadliest warning.
We rely entirely on the sun for, well, literally everything. Our food, our weather, our daily routines, they all revolve around its warmth. But imagine a scenario for a second. What if one day it didn't just radiate light, but death? Picture a heat so incredibly severe that just drawing a breath becomes difficult. The air actually burns your lungs, and thousands of people leave this world in a matter of days. I know, it sounds exactly like the plot of some dystopian sci-fi movie. But here's the thing, this isn't fiction. This is a brutal historical reality that has absolutely struck before.
And this really reframes how we look at global threats. Think about this quote: "The most dangerous weapon in the world is not war, but heat, which is silently destroying humans." We pour trillions of dollars into national security, right? We're constantly sweating over human conflicts, geopolitics, and border defenses. Yet, nature possesses this creeping, silent weapon that effortlessly bypasses every single man-made defense system we've ever engineered. It doesn't need an army to invade. It just needs a few degrees of temperature increase.
Section 1. Europe melts. Let's take a look at the devastating heat wave of 2003.
So, back in 2003, this massive, unprecedented heat wave gripped France, Germany, and Italy. Now, we are talking about highly developed, powerful nations here. They had incredible financial resources, advanced healthcare, and booming economies. But they had a massive fundamental flaw in their design. You see, their infrastructure, their homes, their power grids, they were all built over centuries to survive harsh, freezing winters, not baking summers. At the time, widespread residential air conditioning just wasn't a thing there. So these global powerhouses were completely paralyzed by an invisible force they had simply never prepared for.
And man, the situation escalated incredibly fast, way beyond just being uncomfortable. We're talking total infrastructural failure. The temperature spiked so drastically that the literal asphalt roads began melting. Just think about the compounding effects of that. The very arteries these countries relied on for emergency services, for supply chains, for basic transport, they liquefied under the baking sun. Ambulances struggled to reach the vulnerable. Food and water deliveries were delayed. People were essentially trapped as the ground literally gave way beneath their tires.
Naturally, people did what our instincts tell us to do during extreme weather, right? They sought shelter indoors. But here's the catch. European cities are full of this historic brick, heavy concrete, and stone architecture. It's designed explicitly to trap and hold heat. So these homes turned into literal ovens. The heat didn't just stay outside. It penetrated right through the walls and just compounded day after day as the buildings soaked up the sun's radiation. Even at night, there was absolutely zero thermal relief. There was just nowhere left to hide.
The result of all this? 70,000. In just a few short weeks, an estimated 70,000 people lost their lives. Just wrap your head around the sheer scale of that sudden loss in such a tiny time frame. Hospitals were completely overwhelmed, morgues ran out of space, and emergency responders were pushed way past their breaking points. It proved, without a shadow of a doubt, that modern wealth and cutting-edge medicine cannot reliably shield us from a violently warming atmosphere.
Moving on to Section 2, the 1876 Mega Famine. Let's look at the devastating effects on the subcontinent.
Extreme heat doesn't just kill directly through high temperatures. It systematically dismantles our life support systems. Look at what happened in 1876 across the subcontinent. In a matter of days, a severe heat wave stopped the seasonal rains entirely. Over the following weeks, massive expanses of agricultural land baked completely dry. Give it a few months, and crucial crops simply burned and died in the fields. It was a textbook, cascading ecological failure. When the crops failed, the livestock died. And when the livestock died, a devastating multi-year famine took hold.
The human toll of this chain reaction was just unimaginable. To quote the historical accounts, people began to yearn for a drop of water and a piece of bread. Villages became silent. Entire once bustling communities were pushed to the absolute brink. The population became physically exhausted, immobilized by severe dehydration and starvation, just waiting for relief that wasn't coming. The usual noisy hum of daily life, of farming and commerce, was entirely replaced by an eerie, tragic silence.
And the historical estimates from this are honestly horrifying.
According to records, somewhere between 5 million and 10 million people died in this prolonged disaster. Millions. To put that into perspective for a second, that is the equivalent of a massive modern metropolis being completely wiped off the map. It's a level of human tragedy that is almost impossible to fully comprehend today. And remember, all of this was triggered by a relentless heat wave that starved the land of moisture and shattered the agricultural foundation of a massive population.
Which brings us to Section 3, a warning for tomorrow.
When you compare these historical events side by side, it perfectly demonstrates the terrifying, escalating scale of what the Earth is capable of inflicting on us. The 2003 European heat wave, that revealed our acute, immediate vulnerability in modern, tightly packed urban environments. The 1876 subcontinent famine, that showed the ultimate long-term systemic collapse of regional agriculture. Yes, the eras are vastly different, the contexts are different, but the root cause, exactly the same.
Because history is our witness here. When the Earth spews fire, the power of humanity suddenly becomes very, very small. We love to pride ourselves on our technological advancements, don't we? We think our AC units, our global supply chains, our instant communication networks make us invincible. But when nature unleashes raw, unyielding thermal energy at scale, human ingenuity is immediately humbled. I mean, a power grid failure during a massive heat wave suddenly strips away a century of progress in an instant.
So, ask yourself, what if the sun starts to feel closer and closer in the coming years? What if these extreme thermal events transition from being rare historical anomalies, things we only read about in history books, into a punishing new normal? Imagine a scenario where this kind of thermal pressure tests our physical infrastructure, our power grids, and our agricultural yields year after year without any reprieve.
And what if water becomes more precious than gold? We saw exactly how the 1876 heat wave baked the earth dry and halted the rains. What happens to our modern global economies and our daily routines if basic, life-sustaining drinking water becomes the ultimate, fiercely guarded luxury? Entire industries rely on massive amounts of fresh water. If the heat evaporates our reservoirs and disrupts our rain cycles, the economic and social fallout would be completely unprecedented.
Ultimately, following this progression leads us to a pretty terrifying thought. What if one day, mere survival on Earth becomes our single greatest daily challenge? Not pushing the boundaries of tech, not chasing continuous economic growth, but simply surviving the very atmosphere we were born into. That shifts the entire focus of humanity from thriving and expanding to simply enduring the day.
The reality is, history warned us. We have the clear precedent of the systemic agricultural collapse in 1876. We have the shocking, acute urban crisis of 2003. We've seen exactly what happens to massive populations and highly developed nations when temperatures rise beyond our biological and structural limits. The historical data's right there, the events are documented, and the pattern of destruction is absolutely unmistakable.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, the lingering question I want to leave you with is this. Did humans actually take this warning seriously? Or are we just going about our daily lives, sitting here waiting for the next devastating heat wave to strike before we realize the true power of this silent fire? It's a question we absolutely must answer before nature answers it for us.